Hello everyone, I am back. I wanted to be back last week already, and guys, I did not get it done. I am so sorry about that. With my second part of my life testimony. So I shared a lot about how life was growing up. We had so many good times and so many fun times. And there was also times that were not as good, but every family has that, I feel like. And I'm not sure that if I mentioned this or not, but I dealt with fear on a major level growing up, and that did not get resolved until after we were married. But anyhow, I was at the point of telling you guys about we were just ready to get married, I believe, at the end of the last video. So I had worked in my parents' shop for up until 3 months before up until 3 months before I got married. We got married. So that was I was very, very thankful to have those last 3 months to just get all things ready for the wedding. And yeah, in July, I believe, before we got married in September, Willows wanted to go bear hunting yet, and I was really on the iffy side about it, because I told him I just don't want to have you get killed here now, 3 months before our wedding, going bear hunting. But it was one thing that he had really wanted to do, that he had dreamed of, and he actually did get a bear on that hunt. And I was so grateful for that he had that experience. So then we got married. We had a rocky start to our married life. We hadn't done any sort of counseling beforehand, and it was just the rocky start that we had was just not understanding each other, just not being able to see eye to eye on things suddenly. And it's crazy how that can happen with dating for 2 years, getting to know each other, but so many times the deeper things in life don't get touched. And so, yeah, we didn't do any counseling beforehand, because that was a very distant subject for many people back then, for sure, in the Amish culture. And we got married. With starting married life, I was used to being in a place with lots of action every single day, people to talk with. And we get married, I had these huge piles and baggages of fears tucked inside of me, and going into a house by myself, and I just had such a huge fear of walking into an empty house. Fear just kicked up. I could not deal with the stuff, and I didn't know how to deal with it. But let's just put it this way. It was one of the hardest times of my life, was dealing with that massive amount of fear in my life. And the thing that I want to bring out here is parents, please create a safe place for your kiddos to share a place that they know that they won't be laughed at, they won't be ridiculed for being afraid of the dark, being afraid of something that might have happened that really might not have been anything to be afraid of, but really left a mark on their hearts. Please create a space that they can actually share that and not carry that with them into their adult years. It becomes really, really, really tough once you're an adult trying to deal with this pile of fear. And excuse me. So getting married, starting a new, being a homemaker at home, it was not seen well to get for a woman to get a job. The guys worked and that was it. So, and as much as I actually gave it a thought that I would just love to just work somewhere for a little bit, because being at home alone was just so awful for me. And so soon after we were married, like 4 weeks after we were married, maybe not even that long, 2 weeks actually. It was like 2 to 3 weeks after we were married, I found out that I'm pregnant, and I was very, very sick. But I was so looking forward to having a baby, because just so I'm not alone. And so I welcomed it with open arms, because I was like, even though it's so soon after we're married, I was happy because it meant that I wouldn't be alone and I'd have a little child with me. And so 4 weeks after we were married, we went on a honeymoon to the Smoky Mountains. And in all the things of getting to know each other, stepping out, doing new things, it was really, really tough with the job that he had at the time. He had just started a new job and it did not pay very much, and we had to do with very little. But we made it. But we 4 weeks after we were married, we went on our honeymoon to the Smoky Mountains, and we had a wonderful trip. We had a couple that married just a week before us went with us, and it was amazing. It was really fun. We walked the streets of Gatlinburg quite a bit, and yeah, sad to say, we were at home for a week. I had a miscarriage, and that was really, really hard on both of us, on our marriage, with the things that we were struggling with already, trying to understand each other. Having a miscarriage yet, thrown into that, I was filled with so much pain because of this loss. And while Willis wanted to understand it so bad, he could not understand the connection that was already formed between the child and myself. And I feel like this is something that is so often not talked about, but in the Amish circles, I feel like so many women, and it might be better now than it was back then, but so many women just go through this alone. Just go through it alone. Like nobody actually realizes that you had a baby, this baby died, and this was actually a real little human life. And so a lot of that feeling like I was alone, feeling alone and trying to deal with all this pain, and just hearing a word or two about, I don't know, even hearing a song about losing a baby or children in heaven, like it just tore me up. Like I couldn't even talk about our miscarriage without just crying. And so that time was really, really hard for both of us, because he so badly wanted to understand me, and it was just really hard for him, because with not understanding the connection that happens instantly at conception. So putting that aside, like, honestly, I look back and I am so, so grateful for everything, even though he was so puzzled about things, so puzzled as to why my fear was so huge, um, so puzzled about my pain and stuff. Like, he tried his very, very best to understand me and to help me through those times. Um, so still at that time, that was like 2 months after we were married, so things hadn't changed much about going to a counselor or whatever. Like, we just thought we could surely get through this ourselves. And we 2 months later, after our miscarriage, we became pregnant with our oldest son. And I was so happy. I was like, this is such a relief for me. I finally don't have to be alone during the day. My biggest thing was being alone and facing the fears of all those rooms upstairs that I didn't go up to often. Like, something that would totally terrorize me, and that is if I thought I heard a sound or a creak upstairs in our little house. And I know that there'd be like a couple hours yet before he comes home. And so I would just be paralyzed in fear, until he came home and he could go look. And so that was very, very hard. I honestly think that I'm going to tell you about one time. I was down in our kitchen and I was chopping up peppers for the freezer, and I was very much pregnant, and I was cutting up peppers, and all at once I was standing in front of the counter, and all at once I hear this, just like someone taking a plastic bag and scrunching it up on a ball. And it sounded like upstairs. Guys, I was terrorized. I literally froze and I could not move for a long time. And finally I told myself, you know what? It's going to be hours before Willis comes home. I'm going to go upstairs myself. I'm going to see what that was. I braved it. I faced my fears and I went upstairs. I was so terrorized. I literally almost couldn't do it. I went upstairs and I looked in every nook and cranny, and of course there was nothing. But let's just put it this way. The devil loves to make you believe that there is something. Totally. So guys, I was so paralyzed, but honestly, that was just one time. And one day I went out and I hitched up our horse. I could hitch her up myself. And I hitched her up and went to the store, and I come home, and I hadn't noticed this when I left, but when I came home, I noticed that one of our upstairs windows, the curtain was blowing out. And the window was wide open. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Like, I wasn't even upstairs. Like, how did this happen? Other than someone crawling up with a ladder or something. And so I was so terrorized. And I went into the garage and I called Willis. We had our phone in the garage and honestly, it would have helped me a ton to have a phone in the house. But we weren't allowed to have a phone in the house at the time. And so it was in the garage, and we had a breezeway between the house and the garage. So we still had to go outside. There was just under a roof, no walls. But anyhow, I went out and I called Willis. I was too terrified to go into the house, and I just told him, I said, honey, I said, why is the window open? I said, the curtain is blowing out the window. And he said, oh, he said, I'm so sorry. I was up there yesterday and I forgot to close it. So I went in and I went upstairs and I closed the window, locked it. And like I said, like, he never once thought about it, because this was just like, I think it happened like 3 months after our marriage, after we married. So the struggle was great. I struggled to communicate my fear to him because of being afraid to tell anyone growing up. Like, I was just so afraid of being laughed at and not understood about my fears. And so, let's see. It was, that would have been in December, I believe. And it was really cold, so there was a chilly air already. But I powered through. Like, that next year, we just powered through. We had Lyle in October of, after we were married for a year in September, and we had Lyle in October. So, so grateful I was to have a little baby with me, and just someone to make noise in the house. Like, it helped me so majorly because of the major fears that I faced. And so when Lyle was 3 months old, we bought a house out west of Holmesville. And at this time we were still Amish, and we moved out there. And so a lot of our struggles had started already. In the first year, living close to Benton, Ohio, we were starting to face a lot of struggles of, Willis would have liked to change churches, and I was very much the type that I was like, no, I won't do that. I just won't. I'm not able to do that to my family. I just can't do that. And so it was just really out of the question for me at the time. I didn't even give it a thought. Like, I was just very desperate that he enjoys being Amish. Like, I was just really desperate on that side. And meanwhile, he did not understand why it was so hard for me. And well, the thing is, guys, I won't go into much detail, but just after we got married, my sister changed churches, and I couldn't understand all of it. Like, I could not understand why. I could not, like, there was so much of the hard Amish, deep Amish thinking in our families that I just couldn't understand. Like, my mind could not grasp that. And why? Like, what made them do this? Like, and I know some things. I know, like, between our relationships with parents, as children, I don't know, we often felt like a lot was required from us in order to be Amish. And so if we did not dress a certain way, if we did not wear a certain thing, something would definitely be said to us. So the struggle was real there. Soon after we were married, I started seeing this because the same thing started happening to me. And I didn't deal with that before we were married because I was still living at home, and I guess they still had more of an upper hand on how I dressed. And so after we were married, things just got drastically worse. In that area, we were often, back then, we were required to wear aprons to go away and I just remember being asked why I don't have an apron on one time, and it really upset me. Why do I have to wear an apron? It's less than comfortable. It's something that I just simply hated wearing. I hated wearing an apron. And to this day, I don't like anything tied around my waist. Like, I just can't. And so that was a struggle that we had, was just all of the things coming our way. And we had Lyle, we moved out west of Holmesville to our property, our first property that we owned. And the job that he had wasn't paying very well either. Not saying this to put anyone down, but I'm just saying that the struggle was very real. We just thought it was probably because we were just young married and we were just trying to figure life out and figure out how to make it. So we lived there for almost a year, I believe, or was a little over a year. Trying to think. We moved there and it was not quite a year. We owned it for half a year and we were like, we absolutely could not do it financially. So we decided to sell, and we sold the place and moved in closer to my parents. We had struggled with a lot of church issues out there. We were wanting to go to his parents' church, and we were living right on the line, literally right on the other side of the line. And we requested that, we wondered if we could go over to their church, and they said we can't. Okay, so that was just another thing, that things weren't going well for us at all. Our marriage was not doing well. And when I say not doing well, it was at the point of wondering sometimes if I'd see my husband walk in the door again in the evening. And it was really hard. It was a really, really hard time for us. And still, we were still not into getting counseling because of it being so looked down on in the Amish community. And so we struggle on. Lyle was about a year old, I believe, not quite a year old. And through those very, very dark times, he was, I believe, 8 months old. We had another miscarriage. I was like 10 to 11 weeks along. And I was very, very, very sick to start with. And suddenly that left, but I didn't really think much about it. I just figured I'm far enough that it's probably just relieving me a little bit once. And if you usually get sick in pregnancy, you know what I'm talking about. It's not fun at all. And I get so sick, like I can't cook. I have to have everything in me to just keep myself alive and to do what I have to do every day. It's just very tough. We're talking puking so often during the day that even just sitting up in bed, you're gonna have to throw up. And anyway, one Saturday night, we were at a friend's house, and on the way home, just before we left our friend's house, I noticed that I was spotting just a little bit, and I was really concerned. And we came home, and I started cramping, and I told Willis, I said, this is pretty bad. Like, I can understand this. and not sure what's going on, but I was choosing to believe that everything's okay, but kind of in my heart I knew that it wasn't. And so by early the next morning, Sunday mornings, everybody was in church already. And if you were Amish, you know that at 9:30 there's not going to be a single Amish soul at home, pretty much. Even to watch children or anyone. So his parents happened to have opposite Sunday from us, and one of his friends, thankfully, we were between calling the ambulance or trying to get a driver, and I didn't want the ambulance to come because, man, I was just, yeah. But I was losing a lot of blood, and we knew that we had to go in. We didn't have a choice. So he called his friend, and his friend was like, yes, I can come right away. I was so grateful. I was so grateful. I won't go much into detail about the rest, other than we dropped Lyle off at his mom and dad's, and we went into the hospital. Within like, I don't know, half an hour to an hour, I was in surgery. They did a D&C and they found the baby. But baby had died already like a couple weeks before, I believe. And just doing an ultrasound, they couldn't even see that there was a pregnancy. Yeah, they said they could see that there was a pregnancy, but they said they can't see a baby. There's no evidence of a baby there. Like, I think it must have been that my uterus was so full of blood clots and blood that they couldn't pick it up. The ultrasound machine wouldn't pick it up. Even a vaginal ultrasound wouldn't pick it up. So they ended up doing a D&C. They found baby, and we went home. We were home by a little after lunch, I believe. We came home, and my parents came out that afternoon, and we just talked, and it was just really, really hard for us. And Monday mornings, so we had our baby there, and they had put him or her in a little container, in a tiny crocheted blanket, and wrapped it up and sent baby home with us. And so Monday mornings came, and we knew that we'd have to bury baby Monday mornings. I wasn't feeling well enough to even go outside, but Willow said if there would ever be a need, there was nobody around. Nobody came. Nobody was there. And he had to bury baby by himself. And he just said, honey, never in my life could I do that again. He said, I cannot bury my own children. And that was a really, really tough time for us. We went through a very, very hard time. And someone introduced us to the bereavement nurse at Pomerene, and she was doing like bereavement classes or whatever. Like, she was being there for all the parents that had lost babies and just helping them to heal from that pain. That will never leave you, but it does get better over time. With time, you can talk about your babies in heaven. You can be happy for them. It's just a part of grief, but we went to quite a few of those classes. We moved when I became pregnant, like a couple months after having that miscarriage, I became pregnant with Elena. And I was like 6 months pregnant when we moved back in east of Holmesville. So closer to my parents. We were going to their church then, and we had Elena. And when we moved to a place that we knew we could only be there for like 6 months. So we were there. Elena was 3 months old when we moved again. And so that was our third. Elena was born at our third place that we lived at. And then we moved, when she was 3 months old, we moved to our fourth place, which was actually at where the lighthouse used to be. We moved there and we stayed there until Elena was a year old. And the month that she turned a year old, we made the decision to actually leave the Amish. And at the time, we didn't know if we could stay there. But so this was really, really tough as well, because this was now the church that my parents were in and my two younger sisters. And so just a lot of things that happened in that last year. When Elena was 6 weeks old, we went for a counseling session at Freedom Hills with Jeremy Chupp was our counselor. And I just never ever had someone understand us to the level that he did and teach us how to understand each other. Just never in my life. And we've been so extremely grateful for him. And I know that it wasn't him, but it was God in him, working through him. And we were just so grateful. Like, the fear and the pain that I was carried on through those moves and into our third place that we lived at. And that is when things took a drastic turn for the worse. And we were at the point, like, guys, we were living with each other, but it was just like two people living in a house trying to raise two babies. Honestly, we often in the evenings, we would simply say, let's just go away. Like, let's go somewhere so we don't have to be at home by ourselves. Because it just seemed like we could not understand what each other was saying. And it was just a very, very dark time for us, a very dark time. Fear was a major. It was really, really bad. I won't personally share details unless somebody wants to message me. Just some things that happen and stuff, like, it's just not fear. Let's just put it this way. The Lord does not give anybody fear, okay? And there was a very evil force behind this fear. Excuse me. So that carried on into our fourth house. By the time, so when Elena was 6 weeks old, we did our first 3-hour counseling session. And we came home and we looked at each other like different people. And a lot of people actually mentioned something like, what happened to Willis and Martha? Like, they're just so different. And I was like, praise God, because I know that my face carried a lot of pain and hurt, and most definitely not peace. And a person that is filled with the Holy Spirit, used to being with me and stuff, knows that there was a lot of pain involved in this situation. And we ended up, we did try another counseling place before going to Freedom Hills, because we thought it was just a better looked up to place in the Amish community. And after we spent hundreds of dollars going there, we found out that, oh, I guess it's not so good, or not so looked up to in the Amish community. So I was past the point of caring what anybody thinks. If we go somewhere, we just wanted help. We wanted to get out of this mess and love each other. Like, we wanted to be able to love each other and to care for each other and to raise our children in understanding each other. And are things perfect now? Absolutely not. We grow all the time, but like I said, we would go away in the evenings just so we wouldn't have to be alone at home. But after we had our 3-hour counseling session, things drastically changed for us. And let's just put it this way. Prayer wasn't shoved down our throat when we went to that counseling session. He knew that we weren't even ready to pray. Like, he knew that we weren't even ready to pray for each other or to be there for each other. He just simply, he helped us understand how the other works, like how our minds are working, how we can be there for each other, and things just really came to light that we never knew about each other. We didn't understand each other to that level. And so we come home, we had a camping trip planned that weekend, and with just having had a tiny baby, guys, I was very much in the postpartum state, and I came home, I was so emotionally drained from sharing all that pain and that fear and having someone actually understand me, what I'm saying. Just really, really, yeah, we got home. I did not have a stitch packed for our camping trip that weekend. We were going Friday afternoons until Sunday nights, guys. And we had a 6-week-old baby, and we come home, and this was so unusual for Willis to do this. And he goes, honey, you know what? Why don't you just go to bed? I'll get the camping things together. I'll get ready to leave. And if you just tell me what to pack from our clothes and stuff, I'll pack it and we're good to go. And so I just kind of gave him a list of things to get together. And he wakes me up about half an hour before the driver was supposed to be there, because we were still Amish then. And I wake up and I ask him, are you, like, what do I need to pack it? And he's like, honey, there's everything out in the yard. Like, you don't have to pack anything. I packed everything for you. And I was just like, I was so overwhelmed and so amazed, because I grew up thinking, I can do this. Like, I got this. I don't need help. I don't need, I can do this myself. And come to realize what a blessing that is when your special someone can take a load of that off your shoulders, like that off your shoulders. And I was so grateful. And that whole weekend, he took care of Lyle like I just didn't have to worry about Lyle, and I could put my focus on Elena, and I knew that Lyle was safe. He was with Willis. Willis had him. He was getting him food. I just had nothing to worry, and that was such a stress-free camping trip, and so amazing, guys. So when we come home, yeah, we finally we were at the place where we enjoyed being with each other, and we actually knew how to work with each other, how to understand each other, how to understand when the other wasn't feeling loved or wasn't feeling was feeling down about something, or we knew how to encourage each other, and we were just so grateful. I can honestly say our marriage did like a 360 with just that, with just the 3-hour marriage session that we had. Praise to God, because it was a rough one. And we moved when Elena was 3 months old, and over the continued time, I continued healing. Things continued to get better. We could finally, we had one struggle that we had was both of our families thought different. So we go to one family and we'd hear this one way that we should do this. And we go to the other family and they would say we should do this. So we actually, after our counseling, we found a common ground to stand on. We found our own ground to stand on. And so grateful were we that Jeremy led us to the Lord, and he just helped us to see and to understand where this fear was coming from, how to get rid of it. That was so huge. And we were so extremely grateful for him. I know there's people out there that don't like him at all, and I know he's well aware of that. But I just want to say this. If you've ever been in our shoes and you've been to him for counseling and you've been helped to the extent that we were, you will like him totally. And he never wants one misconception that is often had by the Amish people, and that is that they believe that he talked us into switching churches simply because we switched churches a couple months after our counseling session, and that was not the case. Not the case. He never once, never even talked about church. Never even talked about it. The only thing that he did was to lead us to Jesus, help us to understand each other, and truly, truly love each other. That was all he did. Nothing else. Nothing. And I know that there's so many people that will not actually believe me on that, but that's truth. That is the absolute truth, guys. And there's many people that don't like Freedom House, and that's okay. You don't have to. I'm totally fine with that. I'm just saying that I got a completely different view of that place once I was helped so majorly. And being able to go outside in the dark without my husband with me was a huge feat for me. And that was one evening I had to go outside for something. I'm not sure what I went outside for, but I grabbed the flashlight without even thinking. I grabbed the flashlight, ran outdoors, and did my thing, came back in. And Willis goes, "You just did what?" And I said, "Oh, I I just went outside in the dark by myself. And that, guys, that is when it truly hits home how far you've come. But I am at 45 minutes on this video. I am going to stop here. Next video will be about when we left the Amish and going forward from there. So I know I shared a lot about fear. I shared a lot about our marriage struggles early on. I want all of you to feel free to reach out, to message me with any questions that you might have. I hope this can encourage someone. I hope this can help someone. Maybe somebody is going to watch this that is actually going through a struggle similar to ours. And yeah, it was just, the only longing that I have is that this can help marriages, that this can help other men and women to find common ground and to know that there is nothing wrong with you if you do go for counseling. You don't have a sick mind if you want to go for counseling in order to fix your marriage or to help your marriage. You're not sick, okay? You're not sick. It's simply a thing. There are cases that more extensive counseling is needed. Just a lot more extensive nutrition is needed, whatever, medication. I know that there are cases where medication is needed, but there's also cases that medication gets pushed on somebody that actually doesn't need it. And I actually personally have a friend who went through that, and she has shared already. She said, it just made my mind so foggy that I couldn't think, and I had a major headache all the time. So I do know that there's times when medication is not needed, but it's given. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Please comment, like, subscribe, whatever. I love having you here, and I appreciate every single one of you. So yeah, thank you for being here. Next time, we're going to be talking about when we left the Amish, a little bit more into detail, how that all went and stuff. So thank you for being here. We love you guys. If you were encouraged, leave a comment. Yeah. Love you. See ya.